Welcome to the Mavens Do It Better podcast. And now, your host, Heather Newman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Mavens Do It Better podcast. I'm super excited today to have on Alicia Dara, and she is amazing. She and I have known each other for a while, but hadn't really sort of met and talked in a while. So I got to catch up with her, and she is a voice teacher, she's a coach, she's a musician, she's a blogger, she's a badass, all of those things. Yep. And welcome. Say hi to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. Heather, your voice. Can we talk about it?
Well,
I was just telling my husband I understand why she has a podcast, because people just want to bathe in the sound of that gorgeous purple voice. It's rare and beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Well, and right back at you. It's so, when we were talking the other day, I was just like, just say more things, please. That's so good. So, yeah.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say. I'm getting over the flu, honestly, this week, so it's not my best voice day, but I'm hydrated, I'm a little caffeinated, I'm even mentholated. I think I'm going to be okay.
I know. It's like slather on the Vicks, right? I think,
yes, exactly.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Get that, what are those, the oil diffusers, and, get some of that good eucalyptus or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. Free the lungs.
Yes,
free the breath.
Free the breath, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you are, obviously you do your voice teacher with singing and public speaking, and then you also do a bunch of group training and it's public speaking boot camp for women, right?
I do. So I give different kinds of trainings. My most popular training by far is called Public Speaking Bootcamp for Women.
Yes.
And it is a dedicated training in which we work on the 3 buckets of skills. You've got the basic anatomy bucket. It's how your voice works and how to take care of it going forward. You've got your sort of charisma bucket, which is kind of the way that you project who you are in the world. And the third one really has to do with like your content and whatever it is that you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So it is also a great wonderful team bonding exercise for women. It's one of the reasons why I was made a Microsoft vendor, actually, because I was doing it so much, and so many women were having this experience. And the first time I went in to give a training at Microsoft on campus to my friend's team in the Women in Gaming group, I noticed right away that many of the women were sort of greeting each other as soon as they came in the room, as if they kind of didn't really know each other. Like they'd seen each other around here and there, but they weren't really sort of that close to each other. And after the boot camp, everybody was, talking and laughing, and there was so much great feedback. I got so many people telling me, wow, it was so great for us to just kind of bond in that experience. So it has that added benefit. It's wonderful. And I give it regularly to the public as well. So it's a great place to meet other fantastic women and work on your public speaking in a supportive and encouraging environment.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, you and I both share a Microsoft connection for sure. Cause with my history on the SharePoint team and, being an employee, being a vendor, and being a partner, all that kind of stuff. And so, so I was really interested in that from that perspective, because it's really, And, I had Julia White, who's corporate vice president of Azure marketing on, and she's just such a light, and she's such a powerful woman and a speaker, and, everything. And we talked a little bit about that, because we see her, on most keynotes that are in that space. And she talked about, being, not being like, oh my goodness, I got to get on stage and I got to figure it out, and I love that people are willing to share those stories, because, public speaking is something that is high on the list of like spiders and sharks, it's terrible.
It really is. Yeah. Julie's kind of a legend. It's public speaking is one of those things that is so, it has such a kind of a glow around it. It has such a glow of terror for so many people. And the funny thing is, once people sort of come into the full power of their voice, they actually tell me that they start speaking up for themselves in every area of their lives.
Yeah.
So the way that I think about it is that there's a lifetime value. Like when you actually take a public speaking training, you decide you're going to work on your public speaking in a dedicated way, you're actually working not just on that particular event that you're working on, but also really on the way you present yourself in the world. And for women especially, that is so important. It's so important that we're able to speak up and represent who we are and what we believe in, both at work, but also just in our lives. It's crucial for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So on point. Yeah, I credit a woman named Donna Messina, who is an English teacher back in high school, and a few other teachers there, but her for sure. She was my speech coach for the oratory team. And,
great.
So I was an original orator, and I did a 7-minute memorized speech, and mine was on why censorship is un-American. And yeah, a little fiery, of course, I guess.
Love it.
But she really, that was the first person that, like, really outside of my family. But it's different when someone else does it. I think that's outside your family or your sort of group, and she really was like, let's talk about your voice. And I'm not talking about what you sound like, but what you have to say and who you are and how you show up. Right. And
right.
That was really an important, she is still and was an important person in my life on that journey for sure.
Oh, that's great, Heather.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of social science to correlate between having a really strong background, like oratorial background in high school, and having higher self-esteem. There's a correlation there, apparently, which I didn't know about. I just found out about. So in other words, kids who take oratory and speech and debating and stuff rate themselves higher in self-esteem than kids who don't.
Oh, yes, that would make sense to me for sure. Yeah, that's very cool. And so you also, amongst your boot camps and holding, workshops, you're also, so you have 5 original solo records as a musician?
Yeah, I do. And I actually sing and play in a band right now too. So
what's the band?
Oh, my band is called Diamond Wolf.
Nice.
DiamondWolfMusic.com. Yep, Diamond
okay.
Wolf.
Cool.
So I was born into a family of professional symphony musicians.
Oh.
And everybody in my community, when I was growing up at home in Vancouver, BC, everybody was a musician. Everybody was an artist of some kind. And music is very natural for me. I was trained in New York City in musical theater.
Yep.
And I've been a singer my whole life. And I started when I was really young. I made my first record in 97, I
Wow.
So I made a lot of records, and I also play guitar, and I've written all my songs, etc. Diamond Wolf is my main band right now, although we've taken a year hiatus to get a bunch of fun stuff done. But we're going to release our second record this year. Super excited about it. Everything got recorded to analog tape. It sounds sweet.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Close harmony, folk rock singing. It's a great time. I just love it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about both of us being theater majors, and
yes,
and what's interesting is I have another friend, Liz Sundet, who's she was an arts major as well, and she's a Microsoft MVP. And when you start digging around in technology, I think the bridge between music and mathematics and then developing and coding is, there's so many synergies that go along with that,
Yeah, and also improvisation. I just had this conversation the other day with a really close friend of mine who is also an actor and works occasionally at Microsoft as a speech coach. There is something about improvisation. Like I'm constantly advocating for improvisation wherever I go for improv training, because it is so important to be able to think on your feet and to be able to flow with ideas and to create something out of nothing is such an important skill, I think. And so many of the people that I meet in the tech industry who are kind of stuck in careers, stuck in their sort of where they want to go, what they want to do, it's amazing. Working on public speaking and improvisation really opens them up. It's kind of amazing, you know? And again, if you really want to be a great public speaker, you absolutely have to improvise, because you have to be able to answer questions. You have to be 5 levels deep on your subject. You have to be able to be articulate and compelling and engaging, not just in the prepared portion of your speech, but in the moments when you're on the spot answering questions and really helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and with theater training, you get that, those of us who were there, I remember we were doing a Marivaux play called The Game of Love and Chance when I ran a theater company with folks in Seattle, and my wig fell off. and my partner on stage with me was kneeling around me because he was begging me to like marry him or something like that. And I threw my head back and my wig fell off, and the audience like died, right? And he was like looking at me because he couldn't see that my wig had fallen off, right? But like in that moment, it was like, what do we do? Do I pick it up? And we went on, and he like looked around me, which made everybody laugh even more. But I think also transferring that kind of stuff into being like a producer, I think that there's a lot of us. And anytime you build something, you're a producer or a maker, right? And so improvisation is super important with that, because sometimes that thing doesn't fit there, and what do we do to make it work, and can I get the elephant to show up in Times Square with Adam Levine on it? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Did you actually do that, Heather?
No,
Really?
I didn't, but I love that example, and I use it all the time because it makes people laugh. But I was like, I wonder if I was asked to do that, if I could really get it done.
I totally believe you could. My money's on you, babe. My money's on you.
I think so too, but yeah, I just wouldn't paint the elephant pink or anything because you shouldn't do that to animals. But anyway,
yes, no, that's true
for sure. But yeah, so and I know that you so you're in, what city are you in? Tell everybody.
Seattle.
Okay.
I'm in Seattle.
Yep, absolutely. So coming to us from Seattle, and today I'm at home in Marina Del Rey. So, and we're obviously doing this virtually. I know that you also have, from your bio and from talking to you and everything, that you have been an activist since you were about 15. And
I have been, yes.
Yeah. So will you talk a little bit about that? Because close to my heart too, and love for you to talk about that. Yeah,
sure. I've been a feminist activist since I was 15 years old. When I was 15, a teacher in my classroom at home in Canada stood up in the classroom and spewed out some horrible anti-choice rhetoric. And I stood up and I pointed my finger at him and I said, "You can't do that." And he threw me out of the classroom, and I went right down the hall to the principal's office and I told him what happened. And I later learned, much later, that he had been censured, which is kind of a big deal in Canada when you grow up there.
Okay.
And because of that, I was voted most likely to start a new feminist movement in my high school yearbook.
Sure.
Which is not, it was not meant as a compliment. It was a pejorative. It was a put down.
Right. Yeah.
Because, at that time it was still kind of a dirty word and sort of considered to be kind of a throwback and stuff. And I already knew who I was. I already was fine with it. It wasn't a problem for me. But ever since then, that was my first real lesson in understanding, like, if you stand up for something that you really believe in that is controversial, people are going to call you an activist, and you better be ready to do that. You know?
Absolutely.
So I serve on the board of advocates of Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest. Because women's healthcare and wellness is my passion, my other passion.
Yep.
Aside from women's voices.
Yes, sure.
And periodically I go around and I talk about the work that I do, that I've done volunteering with Planned Parenthood. I've done everything from, stapling papers together to photocopies to speaking at events. And I also put together, a couple years back, I put together a CD compilation of Northwest fans to benefit Planned Parenthood. And it's kind of my spiritual mother. I love it. And I also just really work very hard to make sure that every woman that I come in contact with, every woman that I'm with, really understands her value and is really in touch with that and really sees the bigger picture in terms of how important women's voices really are. It's funny, Heather, I love that at the beginning of this intro you called me a badass, because I just sent out an email yesterday to my mailing list, which is how I mostly communicate with everybody through my email.
For sure.
I sent out this email about how I can't stand the term badass women.
That's hilarious.
and about why it sort of bothered me. And really it comes down to the fact that, and there's a whole argument to be made about it.
Absolutely.
Both sides. But for me, what I wrote in my post, just briefly to summarize, because it was quite a long one.
Yeah. I can't wait to read it.
Women are constantly being told how to be women.
For sure.
And we're under enormous, just huge, enormous cultural, political, and social scrutiny. Every single thing we do, every single thing we wear, every single thing we think, every single thing we say is under scrutiny. And really creating this sort of category of, like, women who are like badass creates another category of women who are not. And ultimately, I believe that's bad for women, actually.
Right. Well, it's kind of the term Wonder Woman too, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think women who are living under horrible violence and oppression and poverty are badass Wonder Women, and I don't think any of them are getting any kind of credit for that.
Right. They're not called badasses on a podcast necessarily.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, it's just really a question of kind of understanding the sort of bigger picture at work.
Yeah.
But for me, it all comes back to women's voices. The thing that I've learned in the 20 plus years I've been doing this job is that women's voices are always about women's power, how we feel about our power, how we broadcast our power to the material world, and how the world responds to that power. So in my activism, in my work that I do as a voice coach, a professional coach, I'm always keeping these things in mind, and I'm always asking myself, how can I help make women's voices stronger today? That's my mandate.
Right. Yeah. I love that, and I thank you for sharing that, because I feel like. I swear, I had a couple of conversations earlier today talking about, inclusion and belonging and diversity and all of that, and and thinking and how you spoke about the feminism and the word feminist and that where it's a dirty word and hearkening back to a dirty word. And I mean, today it's still a dirty word in many camps, right? Yeah. Right. But it also, like, I wrote a piece about how words matter and, like dissecting sort of, say the word badass, if you look at, what is it Jen, who wrote the book, You're a Badass? It's Jen Shapiro, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's, she's amazing. And
she's a great coach. Jen is a great coach. Oh my Lord. Yeah.
And she's someone in the myriad of like coaches and all of that, you've had so many male voices, especially, you harken back to Napoleon Hill and that whole Think and Grow Rich and Tony Robbins and, so like Zig Ziglar and all that kind of stuff. And I was talking to a friend, I was like, who are the women?
Oh yeah.
Can we name 5? Can we name 10? Can we name 2?
Sure.
And that was kind of interesting in talking about that. And then dissecting words, say like the word badass or Wonder Woman, just like we were talking, and I love it that you just wrote that and I called you that. It's fantastic. And because it is something that I'm like, we're all evolving all the time, right? And we're all trying to say the right things, or I had an issue with somebody, it wasn't me, but I referenced Brene Brown's book where she used the word gypped, and she had someone come up to her and looking at sort of intersectionality of the vitriol that somebody came at her with.
Oh my goodness.
But then, she said, well, she shouldn't have came at me that way. But it's like, wait a minute. Somebody who's been oppressed or, had years of discrimination and all of that, they have a right to be mad, right?
I mean, it's funny about the word feminism. Like, I think that when I was younger, I thought that I had feminism all figured out. And really what I had figured out was white feminism. Mm-hmm. Like, I had a really good sense of what that is. You know? Intersectional feminism and understanding the fact that most people don't even know what that word means, but really the fact that all movements of oppression prop each other up. And so all movements of social justice are connected. Yep. It's so important for us to understand. And the concept of intersectional feminism, I think, promotes a personal evolution that is so powerful, mm-hmm. and just the constant awareness and the understanding that we are always evolving, we're always out here learning, we're always, hopefully we're always maintaining an openness and understanding of what it is that we really want for the world. I was just reading, right before we got on with our talk, I was just reading a terrible report today about just this woman who's an amazing trans activist. She just spoke at an event. She's the PR spokesperson for the Human Rights Campaign, and she was just speaking at an event in the UK. Mm-hmm. And there were some women who attacked her for being a trans woman, and they did it very, very publicly, and they did it in this very big official event. Wow! And this woman just held herself with so much grace, and she said, "We just finished this extraordinary event where I spoke to all these young trans people, and I'm not going to let this incident of hatred." Overshadow that. Right. But really, and these women who were attacking her actually call themselves feminists. They call themselves radical trans exclusionary feminists. They have a vision of what that means to them, Wow. And all of these things these issues are very hot. They're very charged,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but hopefully, ideally, it doesn't culminate in people's minds becoming narrower and more full of hatred. Hopefully we stay open, we have a dialogue with each other, and we respect each other's fundamental human rights, and ideally that's the place we want to live in.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I mean, I was like, like with you also being a theater major, I was like, when I say look at myself, and I'm like, well, my heart is of an artist. That's kind of where I start, and then
me too,
right? Mm-hmm. that's where it starts, and then I'm a marketer and a brander and a strategist, and
mm-hmm.
then
you're a world builder. Yeah, that's your thing. Yeah,
thank you for that. But then and then there's the things you care about, right, and that you're passionate about, and all of that stem out from that, and whatever those things are, and whatever you call them. But it's definitely, God, I really enjoy doing the work in these spaces of women and voices and inclusion and all of that. But it's hard.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And I'm like, and I say that, and maybe somebody is listening and they're like, oh, poor you, Heather Newman. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm sitting here as a white privileged woman who gets to do a podcast because she can. So I know that,
yes, yes.
I'm aware, so, yes. But it is, I love the connection and looking at what you've been doing of like your intersectionality, if you will, or maybe just more your life of where you've taken something that's very artistic, and you've been bringing it to other people, being a world builder of your own, and helping people find their voices, and also coloring that with all the things that you come to the table with. You know?
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And I will say, I think the arts are part of the solution.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sitting here in my office looking at a poster by Shepard Fairey that says "Make art, not war." You know.
Oh my goodness! I have that in my bathroom.
Oh,
that same poster.
Oh, that's awesome. I just got it. I had my eye on it forever, and I just got it framed.
That's awesome.
I think that the arts are part of the solution, and I think that there is so much to be said for a mind, a human mind and heart that is connected to the arts and to what the purpose of the artist is. My father used to talk to me when I was younger about what the purpose of the artist is in society.
Yes.
Which is to reflect culture, to express culture, and ultimately to help create culture.
Yes.
And hopefully, again, really to work toward a fulfillment of supreme human rights, which is kind of, so much of what artists are doing, especially now, I think, is expressing, but really throughout history, is just expressing, a tremendous release for so many oppressive and oppressed cultures. Anytime there's a conventional saying in academia and the arts, which is that anytime artists are forced underground, the art that they make becomes extraordinary. It just kind of explodes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're seeing that now, and I do think that there is a place for an artistic mind and for the artist at every level of society, everywhere, really.
Mm-hmm.
in every level of business and industry, just like there's a place for women in every level of business and industry.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that too, in a big way.
Yeah, well, and just simple songs that kept people going during all kinds of situations. Just even that little thing, like throughout history, right?
Oh my goodness!
Just a simple song that people would sing quietly to keep their hearts from, I don't know, breaking, exploding. Yeah. I was like, you just give me goosebumps. Okay, so let's talk about you are writing a book. Let's talk about that.
Oh, goodness. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So I've been working on this book that comes from a lot of the stuff that I teach during my training called Public Speaking Bootcamp for Women, because I've been contacted by women around the world. I've been contacted by women from India and from China and from Japan and from many different places that I've never been and don't know if I ever will be able to travel to. I would certainly love to, but just in case I can't,
right.
I'm working on this book that really kind of takes a lot of the things we work on in the boot camp and a whole bunch of other stuff that comes from my years of experience of just thousands and thousands of hours of observing women and working with women at close range, and kind of takes it in. It's an amalgamation of all the lessons I've learned, and it is a little bit prescriptive, and it's got a whole bunch of tips and tricks for working on your voice, and it's coming out sometime this spring. Cross your fingers. If you would like to know more, please sign up on my email list via my website. I love to communicate with everybody. I am active on social media, I'd like to say, but I really do love communicating with people via my email list. And I'm so excited about it. And very shortly, I'll have the cover of the book. And have some updates for everybody. Yeah, I'm excited.
Fun.
I'm excited.
That's awesome. When you get ready for that, I would love a couple to. I'll get some from you and pay you for them, obviously. But I'd love to give them to a couple of our listeners and maybe do.
It would be my pleasure.
Contest around that. That would be awesome.
Yes. Oh yes, a contest would be great. Yes, I love contests.
Okay, me too. Yeah, that's great. So much. So something that I always ask everybody and that I'm very interested in is that, looking at moments of sort of macro moments, micro moments in your life, and there's always the big things, sort of the, loves and deaths and marriages or kids or what, like all of those biggies, right? And then there's all the little ones where you're like, oh my goodness, that little one thing that was just a word or a smile or something just was the spark that led me to XYZ. And so can you think of what's your spark? Like maybe one of those things where you were like, yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I saw Dr. Anita Hill speak. So in 2011, I was asked to make the what we call the Ask at a Planned Parenthood fundraiser here in Seattle, and it was unbeknownst to me. It was at that time the biggest luncheon for Planned Parenthood Votes Northwest at the time. It was called the organization. So the political advocacy arm of Planned Parenthood had a big annual fundraising luncheon. And it was at that time the biggest luncheon, you know, and Jay Inslee, our now governor, was there. And I had to make the ask of the donors, and also I had to introduce him. And it was like, you know, up till that point, the highest pressure, I think, public speaking gig I had ever really done.
Right.
And our guest of honor was Professor Hill, Dr. Rita Hill. And I just remember, like, there was this moment, she took the stage, and, you know, she's kind of a petite woman. But she's one of these people who just radiates this enormous presence.
Wow.
And I just remember when she took this, there were two moments for me. One was just when she stepped up to the microphone, I immediately felt the entire weather system in the room change.
Yeah.
It was so dramatic, and there's nothing you could point to. Like, it all happened sort of energetically, like on an energetic level.
Right.
Everybody just felt her. You know, and it was before she'd even opened her mouth, you know. And then she started speaking, and I just remember being a kid, like a young woman, watching these trials and watching what she had been through. And at that moment when she was speaking, I got a sense of how time passes sort of for each of us, and how these movements of social justice keep evolving, and how they become more and more powerful as long as we keep them alive.
Yeah.
So the fact that this woman had been through all this, I mean, I don't know what happens to people after they've been through an experience like she went through in the 1990s, when no one believed her. Nobody believed her,
right.
You know,
yeah,
except for a small but dedicated group of people who said, yeah, we, you know. But she could have easily folded up and just said, you know what, I'm just going to be quiet and teach and not really like interact with the world anymore. But she hasn't done that. She's gone on to become this extraordinary advocate and person. And so I think I just kind of, in that moment also, I just realized, like, you know, God, if she can do it, I think I can probably ramp up whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing, you know?
Sure.
Like, it just sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, like, I'm here giving this talk, and that's great, but there is so much more I could be doing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I still think of that. I still remember it quite vividly, how she affected me and how she changed the room with her presence.
Wow.
As somebody like you who studied theater, I've been in the presence of great actors to do that. And certainly I've coached my share of very charismatic speakers, but this was something different. It was something from the spirit that was forged in a fire, like a public fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of that, she was just in a very deep way. She was utterly fearless.
That's so cool.
You know?
What a great spark moment. That's
so,
okay.
Yeah, I guess I kind of I don't know. I guess I kind of aspire to that. In some way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's, yeah. I find those things super interesting, and everybody's is always very different. And it's like, it's not like you just have one, you know, there's more than one, but usually there's something that sticks out. That's like that one thing when you're like, oh yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I think those moments are kind of like touchstones. They're like personal touchstones that we return to. Hopefully we're all kind of like paying attention in our lives. You know? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Like learning from the stuff that's really important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It is,
I'm fascinated with that, and that if this book ever comes out of mine, that it's definitely about that, you know?
Oh my goodness. I hope so.
Yeah. I'm very interested in, and that's why I keep asking the question to everybody too. But I also just find it fascinating. So yeah. So, oh my God. So let's, you are available online at www.aliciadara.com.
Yes.
And it's spelled like Alicia Keys.
Right.
Yep. And and best way to connect with you, obviously you can do it on social media, and we'll have all that stuff in the show notes, everybody, but
sure.
But yeah, like get on that list of hers, because I know I love your stuff that you put out, and you have a great blog and are putting things out all the time. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like So we should, look for your book to come out, and maybe you'll give me a nudge when you have a book cover, and I'll make sure
I certainly will
blast that out on social media. And
I'm at Microsoft. I'm available for hire at Microsoft. I'm a vendor.
Yep.
I'm available. I would love to come and train some more teams anytime. I love being at Microsoft. It's so international. Women from all over the world I get to work with. I love it there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So all you Microsoft folks that listen, and I know there's a lot of you that do, check her out and say hi, and tell her that you heard it out here on the Mavens Do It Better podcast. Haha. but no, I so appreciate your time and just what you're doing in the world. Thank you for that, and thank you for lifting us all up. And,
it is my pleasure, Heather.
It's really wonderful. So, all right, thank you, and signing off. Thank you, everybody. It was great to be with you again for another Mavens Do It Better podcast. I hope you have yay! And hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks again.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye, everybody. The original music on this podcast was created by Jesse Case.